Hi there. Welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of music with the love of whiskey. With me tonight, as always, my good friend Drew Crowley. What's up, Drew?
Cheers. Hey, not a whole lot. It is Thanksgiving week as we are recording
Yes.
this. So I'm recovering from Friendsgiving football injuries, learning that I'm not as young as I used to be, getting the house all ready for the folks to come in town and prepping for Turkey Day.
Yeah. Well, it is Thanksgiving week. This past week, our Bourbon Fellowship group met, and as we do in every November, it was Wild Turkey Night. Because we wanted to obviously play off the overused pun of Wild Turkey and Thanksgiving, but November is also Jimmy Russell's birth month. So it's another way to celebrate our good, close personal friend, Jimmy. And I can't think of a more. Well, last year, Thanksgiving, we did a show based off of the WKRP episode with the turkey drop. Okay,
Yes.
that was a great way to celebrate Thanksgiving. That was our first Thanksgiving as a show. So this Thanksgiving, I can't think of a better way to celebrate it than to have David Jennings on with us, who is
Mhm.
the wild turkey expert in the world. And we'll bring David in a minute and start picking his brain and his palate. But before we do that, we want to tell you a little bit about the Bar Cart Co-op. Bar Cart Co-op is a group of friends that produce different shows. One show is a Distillers Talk with Alan Bishop and Christy Atkinson. On Distillers Talk, they do just that. They talk with distillers from across the country, around the world. And if you are a whiskey geek at all, man, this is the show for you because they really get deep into it, into the science of it, and how it affects what you're drinking out of your glass. So those shows drop usually on Thursday or Fridays each week. My Whiskey Den airs live Monday nights, 9 o'clock, with Pat and Mike. My Whiskey Den is where craft whiskey is king. And they're doing Brandy Month right now. So there's a great series of shows on craft brandy. Alan Bishop also has what he calls the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. This is where on social media people will reach out to him and ask him questions about distillation. Maybe it's about the grains, maybe it's about barrel entry proof, maybe it's about who knows what. But they'll ask him questions and he'll come on, he'll post answers to it. And it's always very, very interesting. You always come away learning something. And then last but certainly not least is our own show, Bourbon Turntable, which hopefully you know and love because you're listening to it now. And before we get into anything else, we want to share with you this.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe. Hit that bell notification to find out when new episodes are coming out, which do come out every single Wednesday on all of the services: Spotify, Apple Music, Google, maybe Amazon, definitely YouTube. And always hit that like button, but hit it an odd number of times. So then that way it stays as a like.
Thank you very much, Mike. As always, we appreciate your talent and time. Without further ado, we want to welcome to Bourbon Turntable David Jennings. David, welcome to the show, buddy.
How's it going?
Absolutely great. We really appreciate you taking the time to be on with us. And we thought instead of talking about Wild Turkey tonight, we're going to talk about Four Roses. So,
I mean, I could talk about Four Roses, but not like I talk about turkey.
What? We'll get through this show, and hopefully you still like us. But I think it would be fun to have you on a show, and let's talk about other things, and just for the heck of it. I don't know. It might be different.
Well, isn't that kind of what we're going to do a little bit tonight? We're going to talk about music some, right?
We are. I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm going to talk about other whiskey, but
Oh, okay.
So,
well, I can do that too.
yeah. So, but what we're going to start out with is we're during the course of the show, we're going to taste 3 different Wild Turkey expressions with David. The first one we're going to start with is Wild Turkey 101, and because I don't know anybody that doesn't like Wild Turkey 101, and we're going to talk about why we like it and why why it is so universally popular. Then we're going to talk a little later about the Wild Turkey 12-year expression, which was made available in the United States this year.
Well, no, it's
And
not available for the United States. It's export only, but people have been finding ways to get it. So, but we
well,
can circle back to that.
okay.
Sounds
Because
good.
I know I bought it in the United States. I didn't go to
Yep.
Japan to get it. So
Right.
And then
somebody re-imported it, but
good for them. Well, whoever that is, we appreciate it. Was it you? Did you do that?
no, but I
Oh,
could
okay.
if I could, I would.
Okay. And then a little later, we're going to talk about a Russell's Reserve pick. But first of all, David, again, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for
And
having me.
yeah, we really appreciate it. So tell us a little about your background, and not necessarily starting with Wild Turkey, unless this is where it did start. How did you get into whiskey to begin with?
Well, I mean, I've always enjoyed. I say always. I mean, ever since I've been legally allowed to drink, or maybe a little bit before that, possibly. I've always enjoyed a whiskey and Coke, Crown and
Right.
Coke, or Jack and Coke, Jim and Coke, that type of thing.
Right.
Real popular when I was in college in the mid '90s, but that was where it ended, really. I mean, that was just kind of like where the whiskey love stopped. Maybe some shots of 101 in college or something like that. But it wasn't a serious, like I'm gonna figure out what the best whiskey in the world is and get into tasting notes and anything like that. That started around 2013. My brother-in-law had this fancy Crown Royal expression in the blue box, and asked me if I wanted some, and I just assumed it would be in Coke or something, and it was just on the rocks, and I was like, okay, I'll give this a try. I'm an adult, and I liked it. I was like, this is cool, So I visited a liquor store not too long after that and picked up some Crown Royal, and then started kind of going through that catalog, and then started spending time on websites, learning about different whiskey. Got into bourbon because it just seemed to be a profile that I enjoyed, and visited blogs, old school blogs like Sour Mash Manifesto and Red, White, and Bourbon, and a lot of these older sites that aren't really active anymore. And that got me into bourbon American whiskey pretty hardcore. And sometime around 2014, I picked up 101 as just a kind of like not really thinking it was going to be good, because I remembered in college it being the shooter, and I picked up like a 375 milliliter bottle along with something else. I can't remember what. Took it home, and I was fully planning on having it to review for Reddit, because I was reviewing whiskey for Reddit, and was pretty sure it was going to be a bad rating, and I poured it and was like, oh wow, this is pretty good. Like, what's up with this? Like, I thought Wild Turkey was supposed to be bad whiskey, and just fell in love with it pretty much immediately. Like, I was just like, I really like how this tastes. Am I weird? Like, I was like, what's going on here? I thought this was like the bad whiskey. So I started talking to folks about it on Reddit, and they're like, oh yeah, turkey's awesome. And somebody reached out and said, have you ever had Dusty Turkey? And I was like, no, not like, not sipping it that way, back in college, but I didn't know what I was doing, and he sent me a 92 CGF and a 1981 101, and I was just in love. Like, the second I nosed that 101 beer from 1981, I knew that like that was my favorite bourbon in the world. I was like, this is like what I want to drink the rest of my life. And I just burned through that catalog very quickly. Like, I went and I was looking for that profile, which, you're not going to find a Dusty profile in modern, and that goes for any producer, So a lot of people pick on Wild Turkey and say, well, the Dusty stuff's good, but the newer stuff's not what it used to be. And Yeah, I mean, yeah. So Weller's not the Stitzel stuff, and I mean, there's all kinds of brands. Old Granddad. I mean, you can go through. No modern brand of whiskey tastes like the old. I mean, I have Beam White Label from the '70s that tastes amazing. It does not taste anything like the Beam White Label that you get now, which isn't awful, but
Right.
it's a very simple bourbon. But I went through the catalog real quick, and even though I didn't find that Dusty profile, I found profiles that I really loved, and I started learning more about the distillery and the Russell family. And it just I don't know, why do people like what they like? What makes your favorite sports team, or your favorite band, your favorite band? It's like,
Right.
it just speaks to you. Like it does something in your mind that just checks all those boxes. And that's what Wild Turkey, has been for me. And trust me, I drink plenty of other whiskeys, but none of them capture me like Wild Turkey. Like, I have a genuine passion to learn as much as I can about the brand, and I care about it. Like, if something happens that I don't like, it bothers me, or if something happens that I do like, I get excited about it. So
Right.
with the other brands, I'm like, okay, like, we're discontinuing the so and so, 13-year blah blah. I don't care. Like, oh, that was a good whiskey. It's gonna be sad to see that one go.
Right.
And I don't get upset, but like with Turkey, it's like, what the hell, like, come on, folks.
So what's something that's happened in the 5 years that you've been doing this that were something that you said, I don't like this. Why are they doing this? I hate this.
Changing the Kentucky Spirit bottle.
Yes.
I mean,
The tail feather.
I mean, I just, it was killer, and I get it. The liquid inside is the same. I understand that. We all know that. But, there's just something very special about that glass that, to me, I look at that glass and I think Jimmy Russell. Like, I don't even think Wild Turkey. Like, that just, to me, it just has like such a Jimmy kind of connection.
There was no more perfect bottle for a whiskey than that tail feather bottle.
It just looks great. And I hope that one day, and I think they probably will. Don't doubt this. I think that one day there will be some limited edition and they'll bring it back.
Yeah.
Some type of tribute, like, Jimmy's almost he's getting to where he's in his 69th year now.
Right.
Or working towards his 69th year now. So maybe he'll hit 70 and they can do a limited edition with that glass. I would love to see something like that.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
And honestly, Jimmy probably will make it, because I mean, that's his passion. He's not going to retire. I'll tell you that right now.
Right.
And he's got something that just gets him up every morning and gets him to that distillery that most people don't have. Most people just cannot work at the same job their entire life, and to Jimmy, that's not working. And I think that's what keeps him so healthy and going, is just getting up every morning and going to Turkey.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about this 101, because 101, Wild Turkey 101 comes up a lot with Drew and myself on the show, when we're out at a bar, because quite frankly, it's one of my 2 or 3 go-tos if I'm out at a bar. Unless the bar has some sort of really great deal on something, or a bar special selection that I'm willing to pay for, I'm getting, probably 3/4 of the time I'm getting Wild Turkey 101, because it's consistent, it's always good, and it is affordable.
Yep. And it's available everywhere too. I mean, like,
exactly.
Any liquor store in the United States has Wild Turkey 101. I mean, it could be mini bottles or handles or whatever, But there's, in the world of whiskey, and this goes for Scotch, Canadian as well, whatever. There are certain bottles that are just always going to be a solid deal. Like,
Mhm.
you know, when in doubt, get this and you will be okay.
Right.
And for me, none of them are a better example of that than Wild Turkey 101.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
because you've got pretty much right down the middle exactly what a bourbon profile should be.
Mhm.
But on top of that, you get a little extra kick of proof because, you know, most of your entry level whiskeys are, you know, 80, 90 proof, you know, type
Mhm.
of range there, you know, unless you're talking bottled and bond.
Right.
But, you know, most of them try to be in the 80s or 90s to be that approachable kind of, you know, thing. So a lot of your flagship brands don't cross that 100-year mark for their, you know, their flagship. So Wild Turkey has that extra kick of proof, but it's also a little bit older than a lot of your other whiskeys that are your flagships. You know, so like Maker's Mark, you know, it's probably 6-ish years, maybe. You know,
Mhm.
and then Turkey, you're looking at like 6 to 8. So you're getting a little bit. You know, it's
Yeah.
had a couple summers extra there.
It
Um,
it it says on the bottle, and I wanted to make sure that I remember this correctly, that it is perfectly aged for up to 6 to 8 years.
But I do, just from talking with Eddie, I mean, they tend to use 6.5 to 8 year as the bulk of
Mhm.
101. But I
Right.
mean, there's older stuff that goes in there sometimes too. Like, I mean, they'll
Sure.
have barrels that they had set aside for something special, and then, you know, it comes time to dump them, and you taste them, and they're like, yeah, this one didn't turn out so great. So you just take that extra
Put it in the
woody
blend.
barrel that's 17 years old and dump it into 101, and you know, nobody will ever know. You know,
Right.
so
Right.
um, you know, so there is more age to 101 than your typical entry level or flagship bourbon.
Yeah.
And the price, like you said, it's always affordable. So it's got a lot of things going for it. And even though over the years its profile has changed, like you mentioned that it's consistent, I think it's consistent pretty much year to year. But like if you jump back 10 years or even 5 years, it's a little bit different. And a lot
Mhm.
of that has to do with how Wild Turkey ages their whiskey, which is in traditional wood-clad rick houses that each have their own kind of character, but there's different
Right.
rick houses in season every year because, you know, you don't keep all your stuff like, you know, stored away in particular rick houses. You spread it all out, you know. So, you know, there's consistency from year to year, but, you know, things change. Like, and they changed their still, you know, back in 2010. So there's things that, you know, factors that kind of make that change their entry proofs in 2004 and 2006.
Right.
There's a lot of things that have changed, but it is very consistent from each year to year. And you know what you're gonna like. You're always gonna, even with the profile differences from, like, let's say 10 years ago today, you're still gonna get a buttload of vanilla, caramel. You're gonna get a good bit of oak. You're gonna get some baking spice, some toffee. Sometimes it's nuttier than other times. Sometimes it's
Mhm.
a little bit fruitier than other times. Like you get more orange sometimes. So
Right.
some 101s are kind of orange heavy, and some 101s are kind of like baking spice heavy. But all those notes are just, they're all in there. It's just sometimes the volume is a little bit louder on some of the notes than the other
Right.
ones.
Right.
Yeah.
You're the mix is a little different.
Right.
You know,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. So with the 101, and we all may be drinking different vintages of 101, but this one that I have it's got a little citrus and a little toffee on the nose, and it gets a little, when and on the palate, those flavors kind of carry through, and there's kind of a vanilla creaminess that
Mm-hmm.
comes in as well, and it's just uh, as solid as it gets for you know, the certainly for the price point, but
Sure.
it drinks more expensive than it is, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah. I mean, I've got like mine's I think it's it's a pretty recent one, 2022, probably mid-year.
Hmm.
Just the the stuff you can just go get in your store right now.
Yep.
And like you, I'm not really getting a lot of citrus on this particular batch, but I'm getting a lot of toffee, a lot of nutty toffee, like butter, nutty toffee, and vanilla,
Yep.
pretty heavy, and then some baking spice on the finish, and maybe a little hint of like an orange peel or something here and there, or
Yep.
lemon peel, but it's mostly vanilla toffee, with some oak kind of woven through the nose to the finish.
Yep.
Yep.
I pick up very similar things to you guys. Mine's a little bit on the cinnamon kind of baking spice heavy side, but you mentioned this in passing, David, and I just wanted to point this out. Yeah, the price point's great, the availability is great, but this really is the baseline for what a Kentucky bourbon profile should be.
Sure.
It is sort of the metric by, I think, which a lot of us kind of judge. Is this a good Kentucky bourbon? Good is relative, but it is sort of at least the I don't want to say minimum standard, because I think that downplays the importance of Turkey 101, but it is kind of the baseline that you need to hit if you're making
it's the minimum standard more for the price than it is.
That's right.
Flavor, in a way, because it's like for the money, this is good. So it's like, Wild Turkey is like a phenomenal deal for the price. Whereas like if you go to like, some, I'm not going to pick anybody out, but let's just say you go with, maybe a newer brand that's kind of like a craft distillery, or maybe a craft distillery that's on the way of getting bigger, but you're having to pay like $50 for a 4-year. That's when you have to say, okay, either you're just a fan of craft, or you're a fan of that distillery and buying it as just something you're going to do anyway, and that's fine. Or if you're like real, picky about your bourbon, and you want to get, max out your dollar value, comparing it to 101 is a good rule.
Yep. That's a great way of looking at it. It's well said.
Yeah. Well, but I think, and I don't want to say this too loudly because I don't want anybody to hear it that could make a change, but across most Wild Turkey expressions, they're a value compared to other heritage brands.
Yeah.
You look at Rare Breed, whether you're talking about the rye, you're talking about the bourbon, that is a bargain compared to other barrel proof expressions for other brands.
Yeah, I mean, look at what Rare Breed was created to compete against, which is Booker's.
Right.
So Booker's came out, so the pressure was on for Pernod to find something to kind of go up against that. So Jimmy crafted Rare Breed,
right,
which in a lot of ways is very similar to Booker's, because it's a batched barrel proof whiskey.
Right.
It's not a single barrel, and Jimmy chose to use, instead of 6 to 8, which is what Booker's is, it's 6 to 12, so 6, 8, and 12-year whiskey, to kind of give it that little more of a kind of a maturity there, and that you get on Rare Breed. There's more 12-year in it than people think there is. It's just a lot of those older barrels are aging on lower floors, so you don't get like a lot of the heavier notes that people are thinking they're going to get. But a reason why I use Booker's as an example, not just because it was what Rare Breed was created to compete against, but look at the prices now. So there was a time where Rare Breed and Booker's were priced similarly. When I got into whiskey, Booker's was $45 to $50.
Right.
And at that time, I was like, I can get Booker's anywhere.
Right.
And they were first going to just throw it to $100, and everybody was just like, screw that. I hate Beam, and use some special words to go along with that, with special hashtags that start with the letter F.
Yes.
And so Suntory would turn things around. They're like, wait a minute, wait, hold on. We're gonna slowly increase the price of Booker's over the next couple of years.
Right.
We're eventually going to get to 100, and that's what they've done. And Rare Breed has just stayed pretty much where it's at. I mean, other than price increases that happen for inflation and that type of thing, they haven't come out and said, okay, Rare Breed's going up $25.
Right. It's crept up slowly.
It's
over
crept up
the years,
but with everything else,
Right.
And And so it's at a price that's still very reasonable. I mean, some places see it in the 50s, and other places see it in the 60s. And every rare once in a while you'll see somebody have like a sale, and it's like $45 for Rare Breed, or some kind of steal price where it's like a blowout, and the liquor store is just trying to get rid of inventory. But it's still hovering in the 50 to 60 zone,
right?
Which is a steal for what it is. I mean,
absolutely. Well, and like you mentioned earlier, especially if you compare it not just to Booker's, but you think about some of the Stag expressions, Elijah Craig barrel proof, even Four Roses single barrel proof. Just if we look at those big 5 heritage brands, Rare Breed is the barrel proof one to go to.
Yep. And I think Rare Breed is even more consistent than 101. I don't know why that is, but I feel like with 101 I get more of the nuances, whereas Rare Breed pretty much always tastes like, at least for the last few years, Rare Breed has tasted exactly like what Rare Breed always tastes like to me. You can compare batches and say this one's kind of a little bit this or a little bit that, but the differences don't shoot out as much on Rare Breed as it does for me on 101. I think that's because you've got those guaranteed, well, not guaranteed, they're not on the label, but you've got this pretty much kind of like formula that they've touted as what Rare Breed is for all these years, which is 6, 8, and 12. And the 6 comes from the top floors, the 8 comes from the middle floors, and the 12 comes from the lower floors. And so you've got this formula there that stays a lot more consistent in my mind. But
you're also over the years, they have different proof points for Rare
Breed. They haven't for a while. I mean, it's been 116.8, which is what I'm talking about right now, from like 2016 to now. So that's a good 6 years of having the same batch. And then 03RB lasted for 9 years. And it's, you taste early 03RB and it's night and day different from the last bit of 03RB. And 0199 was the first batch to span more than a year. And then every batch prior to 0199 was like you had a different batch for every year.
Okay. Interesting.
From 91 up.
Okay. So let's start tasting the Wild Turkey 12 year then.
Yeah.
Immediately, and I thought about this because I was kind of alternating between the two as we were talking. The most interesting thing about this is not just how different they are, but in some ways how similar they are, and how that is so. I'm not trying to say that 10112 is the same as 101. It's not. I mean, it is probably the best thing the Wild Turkey's made in some time. I mean, I know a lot of people just go nuts over Russell's 13. Trust me, I love Russell's 13. I really do. But to me, the 10112 that they came out with this year just has a finesse to it that Russell's 13 does not. Like Russell's 13 can be kind of heavy sometimes, and I feel like this has like this real elegance to it. That again, I love Russell's 13. Don't get me wrong, but this just has this nice elegance finesse to it. But specifically the toffee note. So if you go from 101 to 10112, 101 has this butter toffee, kind of like a candy, like a Werther's type of, real light toffee, real easy tasting toffee with some nuttiness to it. Whereas the 10112 has this real heavy, like English toffee, where it's almost like a boozy toffee. It's like a lot more brown sugar and molasses, in that toffee.
Yeah, you mentioned the similarities. I think it's. I don't want to be reductionistic here, but it sort of dials up a lot of the things that you love about the 101 on its own with tannic structure. It's kind of like going from a vanilla latte to a espresso shot type thing, where you're just appreciating a little bit more. It's rather than straight up citrus, there's maybe some citrus rind or some citrus peel. The toffee gets a little bit darker. The oak influence with the baking spices kind of a thing gets just a little bit more spicy in a very pleasant way. It's kind of just like 101 grew up. Obviously, I know it spends more time in the barrel, but it does sort of feels more mature.
That's a great way of putting it. It kind of reminds me of when some folks ask me, like, how do you come up with your tasting notes? What I tell them, I said it's easier than you think. All it is, it's an adjective game.
Right.
So you find the nouns and then you apply adjectives. So example, like with 101, you've got like vanilla, okay? And you say, well, what kind of vanilla? And it's like, well, just like pretty much a baseline vanilla, like a vanilla ice cream or, something very simple vanilla. When you get to like the 10112, it's like a vanilla bean, it's like, a lot, it's got a lot more, head, it's real heady. It's got like a lot of, thickness to it. And like I mentioned the toffee, like you go from a butter toffee to like, an English toffee. You go from like a sweet oak, to a savory oak.
Right.
You go from like a bright citrus, like a lemon peel, to like a blood orange. These are just little small examples. Like you said, cinnamon with the 101. Well, that cinnamon with the 101 becomes more like a baked cinnamon. Like, like you take that cinnamon, you put butter on it, and you stick it in the oven, you bake it, and it becomes like a lot more like a heavier but still sweet, cinnamon. So it's a lot of adjectives there that you can.
Sure.
But the nouns are the same for these two. The nouns are the same. The adjectives are different.
There's something that I get on the nose of the 12-year that gives me reminds me of an Armagnac.
Yeah, it's probably the oak. I mean, just the fact that a lot of those Armagnacs are pretty up there in age.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are aged in cellars, so you get that kind of cellar funk.
Right.
And I get leather in this, which I get in some Armagnacs. And a medicinal cherry kind of note, which maybe not so much an Armagnac, but it has like a fruit note, whereas like an Armagnac, it's more of like a fermented fruit. And this, it's a little bit more of a kind of like not a dried fruit, but like a seasoned fruit.
Right.
But I think the age is it has making a lot of that connection there.
I've always experienced that just a little bit, and this is just my brain's association. And Kevin, I know we've talked about this, but the Wonka candy, like grape flavor. If you think about Fun Dip or Nerds or anything like that, there's an oak note that comes through. It's like that oaky fruit thing. I just always tie that to like grape Fun Dip from childhood kind of a thing.
And that is when you find that tasting note in a whiskey, I think that is that checks a very unique, important box. In my opinion,
I agree. Same thing. There's whiskeys they kind of take you back in time for a split second there. It's pretty special when you get a note like that.
Yeah, it's tremendous. I agree with you, David. I think this is one of the better things that Turkey's done.
Yeah, and it's so well priced. Like in Japan, this is like a $65 bottle, 112. Over here, they're a good bit more.
Yes,
because people are having to go around to like make it happen and get them. But still, even so, like I know Neat, in Louisville had them for sale for like $150. That's a steal. I was just like, I'm sorry, I'm gonna tell you that right now.
Yeah,
it's and if you missed out on Master's Keep Bottled and Bond 17-year, this is probably the next best thing because they're close in proof. They're just a point off, and even though they're 5 years difference, it would not surprise me if this 12-year has older whiskey in it because it has like this woodiness to it that reminds me of that Bottled and Bond, and there's no reason it can't have older whiskey in it, so it could have 14, 15, 16-year whiskey in here. You don't know. I mean, they can batch whatever they want to in it. So yeah, love it. It's like I said, probably the best thing that came out with this year, other than I'm a huge fan of the new Master's Keep, the Unforgotten. I gave it a hard time when it was announced. I thought the name was kind of silly. But it's amazing. Like it really is. But I don't want to derail what we're tasting here. But
no, and I've got a bottle of the Unforgiven. I don't have the Unforgotten yet.
The Forgiven, Forgiven.
Yeah, Forgiven. Yeah, Forgiven. Yeah.
They should have just called it Master's Keep Forgiven, is what they should have done. But
yes,
I mean, I mean, I'm a critic, okay, So if you're listening, Campari, I love you, but this is what I do. I pick on things that and hey, look, it's selling extremely well, so and getting all kinds of accolades. So one could argue they did it the right way, and Unforgotten was the way to go. So
and I think the last few Master's Keep offerings have been really, really good. I've enjoyed.
I wasn't a fan of one. It was fine. It was a good whiskey. It just didn't come across like a Master's Keep to me. Like I think if they had just come out with like its own thing, like 101 Toasted,
right,
I would have been like all over that. I would have been like, yeah, this is cool. This is cool for something new. It just it did not impress me like a Master's Keep usually impresses me. So it's fine. And I even did a blind, I think I even put it on YouTube, where I took like several Kentucky Spirits and I threw one in there with it just to see where it would land, and it ended up winning. And I was just like, okay, so this is a little bit better than I thought it was. But anyway.
Yeah. So you mentioned Campari. And Campari has been in the news lately with their acquisition of Wilderness Trail.
Yep.
How do you see that playing with Wild Turkey?
I don't really think it's going to affect Wild Turkey that much, because Wilderness Trail is its own thing, and they've already come out and said that they're not so much interested in all the contracts that Wilderness Trail has, because I think they have 70% of their volume or something is contract whiskey. They said that they're more interested in growing the brand, the Wilderness Trail brand, and expanding that portfolio. And not only that, but taking it international, which is a big deal, because not a lot of bourbon brands are really looking to like expand internationally. I mean, sure, they all kind of play the field and send things to select markets, but Campari's talking about like taking Wilderness Trail global.
Right.
And Wilderness Trail has the ability to produce at a pretty good capacity.
Yes.
Where that's actually doable. So it'll be interesting. Now, if anything, I could see, so Wild Turkey has liqueurs like Honey and Honey Sting, and it has RTDs for like Australia. And the one thing I know that Wild Turkey's traditionally been short of is 2-year whiskey, because I mean, you're not really, that's not really your bread and butter. Your bread and butter is 101 and rare breed and these type of things. So it's not like you can dump all your stocks at 2 years. You got to keep a majority of those stocks for other things. So as honey grows and the RTD market grows, I could see, and this is not inside information at all, this is just me, just just my own thoughts here, but I could see them saying, hey, we want to keep it Kentucky straight on the RTD can. Can't do that by going to MGP. So but now that we've got Wilderness Trail and they have the ability to produce a ton of whiskey, you could say, okay, well, we're going to use Wilderness Trail to do our liqueur whiskey or our RTD whiskey or whatever, or just blend it in. You just call it, still Kentucky. So you could blend, you could supplement. And anybody that starts freaking out listening to this, like, oh my God, honey's not going to be, again, this is just me talking. I don't have any inside info on this, but also it's just an RTD and it's just a liqueur. Like, I mean, come on, they're dumping sugar and stuff into this. It's like, please don't freak out. It's like, if honey is that sacred to you, it's not like the old honey where it's like just honey and bourbon. Like it's probably like other flavorings and stuff in there now. So don't freak out, and you can always make your own liqueurs and RTDs at home. So,
well, the thing I'll say in support of wild turkey honey is, especially around the holidays. I will put that in iced tea and drink that.
I like honey
all day long.
I'm not a big Sting fan.
Yeah,
but
I would agree.
But for a cocktail,
Sure.
honey does great. Like I like sometimes making an old fashioned and not using simple, but just using honey. So you use wild turkey American honey with like 101 or whatever you want to do, and it's more whiskey forward. Like it's not as sweet as when you just use simple, but it works. It works really, really well. It's like a stronger old fashioned with more of a whiskey taste. So give it a try if you haven't. You
I've
can
made
use a
a
little
note.
bit more.
I will do that this week.
Okay.
I love it as pancake syrup. That's what we do at my house.
Yeah. And I have like my neighbor, he likes just honey on a cube. He likes American honey on a cube.
Really?
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Like if that's what you like to drink, and
absolutely,
that's your thing, then more power to you. I do not like drink shaming. That is like one thing that like burns me up. Like if I post like some picture of like, I don't know, something on the rocks, Russell's Reserve or something, and like, yeah, that'd be a lot better if the ice wasn't in there. It's just like, well, don't drink it with ice then, man. But I'm me, It's like, I don't like that stuff. Don't tell people how to drink their whiskey. They can do whatever they want to with it. I don't care.
Well, the next one that we'll go to is the Russell's Reserve pick. And,
I just started sipping on it, and isn't it amazing how similar it is in character to the 12-year?
Yeah. We'll dive into that in further detail in just a second. But before we do that, I want to make sure that everybody knows about Rare Bird 101 and the book that you've written and the book that you're writing. So tell everybody about this.
Okay, they are both done.
Oh wow! All right.
And the big news is, I'm not sure exactly what day this program is going to air. We're recording this on a Sunday, and as of tomorrow, Monday, the 21st, the new book will start shipping out from my publisher. So it won't be available on Amazon until February.
Yep.
But my publisher is going to go ahead. I've talked to him and I said, look, if people have placed pre-orders through you, can you just go ahead and ship them? And they said, yeah, if you want us to, we will. I said, please do.
Yep.
So if you order through my publisher, you will get the book. So just go to wildturkeybook.com, and you can go to my blog as well, that you should be able to find some post or a link there for the book. But if you go to wildturkeybook.com, it'll have links there to buy Wild Turkey Musings, which is my second book. You can also buy the first book, American Spirit. And the difference between the two are American Spirit is more about the brand history, and kind of like a walk through the core expressions, as well as a few dusties to kind of give you a point of reference there. The second book, Wild Turkey Musings, is about the first 5 years of my blog. It has primarily a lot of my favorite blog posts, but then I've added my, like what you might call your director's cut notes. And it's got a foreword by Fred Minnick and new photography from Victor Sizemore, and everything's been totally reworked, re-edited, revamped. It's got a lot of original artwork from Ricky Frame and some maps by Connor Query showing the different rick houses and the different campuses. A lot of cool stuff in that one. So
very cool.
And it turned out a lot nicer than I ever thought it would be. So I'm very, very happy with Wild Turkey Musings. It just ended up being everything I want to be, plus some.
But at a base level, people can go to Rarebird 101. They can subscribe to your blog.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that you've been talking about tonight in terms of tasting notes, and Wild Turkey 12. You've got some stuff on that.
Yep.
You'll review different expressions, or not expressions, but different years of like 101. We were talking about 101 tonight. So
yeah, and even more so than that, like I actually write for Patreon a lot more than I do for the blog. Like the blog, I tend to put out 3 or 4 posts a month. But if you go to patreon.com/Redbird101, I try to provide content there multiple times a week. So I'll do first pours where I'll open up a bottle and give you my first impression. It may not be the full review, but it's kind of like, this is what I'm getting on day one. I'll do last pours where it's like, I killed this bottle, did it change this type of thing. I'll do comparisons, all kinds of different things I'll write about on Patreon. So I do that because I feel like people that support me monthly deserve a little bit more content. That's just how I do things. So that's patreon.com/Redbird101.
Fantastic. So be sure to check out everything that David's got going on, because this is very well thought out content. It's not just some guy that's throwing around a lot of wild turkey lingo. David really puts a lot of thought into what he's doing.
Well, thank you.
It's very well written. A lot of times you have people that may be able to do good reviews as far as a good palate, but they can't write worth a darn. Or people that can write really well but have a pretty dead palate. David is the best of both worlds. And check out, I have American Spirit. I got it when it was first released. It's a fantastic book. I'll look forward to getting Wild Turkey Musings as well.
Well, thank you.
I know it'll be enjoyable. So
that's way too kind there. I appreciate that. I think that one thing I want to stress, and in the intro, you had mentioned me being an expert. I don't consider myself an expert. I consider myself a super fan. And if anybody's the expert, it's Jimmy and Eddie. But I think that anytime that you are passionate about something, it shows. And if that I'm truly passionate about wild turkey. Like it is not some niche I decided to pick to like kind of grow something on social media or something like that. Not at all. Like the blog started even before I had any kind of social media presence. So when I talk about wild turkey, it's coming from the heart. And I feel like that's always a good thing in whiskey. Not toot my own horn. I'm just saying I love it when people are really, really passionate about something. And right or wrong, it's nice to hear that that honesty there from the heart. So but yeah, so not an expert, just a big fan.
Yeah.
But thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you're very humble. I think that most people in the bourbon community would, if they have a question on wild turkey, they're going to reach out to you. I know that I have.
Please do.
and you've always been very gracious to take the time to respond. So
happy to.
Very much appreciated.
Yeah, I it's fun fielding because when you get requests like Instagram or Twitter, like you sometimes you have to kind of go to that request tab because maybe you're not following the person or the person's private or whatever, and it's funny because I have to weed through those because you get a lot of crap, like a lot of spam and stuff too. It's just like, hi, check out my page, or like it's really bad English. It's like we like you. It's like okay, delete. That's all. But yes, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. I do go through my DM requests and all that kind of stuff, so it's not going to get just pushed aside.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little music while we're sipping on this Russell's Reserve.
Okay.
David. One question that there are a couple questions we ask pretty much every guest we have on the show.
Okay.
And one of those questions is, do you remember what your first album was?
Ooh. Okay. So first album, because like I grew up in a family of music loving parents. So we had a huge vinyl collection. So first vinyl I listened to, or first vinyl that like, our first album actually purchased, I guess it would have been cassette.
You were able to go out and
cassette
and buy.
Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah. I was in fifth grade. And I was like living on well, actually it was before that it was Bad Medicine was in New Jersey. What was the first single off You Give Love a Bad Name? Okay.
Living on a Prayer was on that one. You Give Love a Bad Name was on that
Bad
one.
Name was the first single.
Yeah.
So like when that hit the radio, I was like, I want that. Like whatever that is,
Right.
I want it. I got on my bike and I rode up to the tape store that was at the shopping center about half a mile away, and I got that one. And I loved it. And I burned through Slippery When Wet like so many times, Never Say Goodbye, and it was just a good album. And that got me like I was into like the hair metal stuff. Like I would ride my bike, and I had a Walkman, and I had like Motley Crue, Theater Pain, Girls, and I had the first couple Poison albums, like Look What the Cat Dragged In, and
man,
that was like my Def Leppard Hysteria was a big game changer for me. Like when Hysteria came out, that was like I got really serious about like just getting headphones on, like zoning in. Like I loved the Hysteria album. Like it was just that was everything I wanted in an album. And so all this is like 6th, 7th, 8th grade. So yeah, it was hard for me to convert to like grunge when it happened. Like, but I did eventually. Like I did. Like I like a total Pearl Jam geek and stuff. But like it was really strange because I went from like the hair metal bands that I love so much, and then their albums started kind of like not doing so well. Like the material wasn't so good, and you had to kind of go for like in betweens, like Guns N' Roses, which to me is like kind of like they're not really hair metal, and they're definitely not grunge, but they're kind of like they have the grit of grunge, but they have the vibe of like of some of the hair metal bands, plus some of the 70s. Like a lot of Slash's riffs are like Allman Brothers sounding and Leonard Skinner sounding and stuff like that. So they were kind of like this transitional band, it was like they kind of fit that middle ground. But I had so much fun, as a teenager in music. It was awesome. I grew up at a really good time where just tons of good stuff, Black Album and Simon's Dream and 10, all this kind of stuff was coming out. It was awesome.
So if you're in the, I guess, mid to late 80s is when we're looking at Slippery When Wet and Hysteria and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So then if that's kind of middle school for you, then late high school is going to be the grunge era.
Yep.
Right?
It was. Yep. And 10 came out, and like a lot of people say that, Nevermind was their big, like that was where like the world changed for them. I liked Nevermind. I thought that it had some good tracks on it. I mean, I never have been like a huge Nirvana fan. I mean, I had In Utero, I had Nevermind, I never had Bleach, but when 10 came out, it was Black. I mean, Alive, I was like, okay, but when I first heard Black, I was like, okay, this is something different. And then I like really started going down that path. But between that, if I leave this out, I'm really kind of not giving you my full music scope. So it was the hair metal stuff in middle school, like me riding my bike with Walkman. When I got to high school in 9th grade, I got turned on to REM. Or actually, it was about eighth grade. I think 8th grade. Green came out in 8th grade, and I bought Green, and then I went back. So I got documents.
Yes, I was going to ask exactly what I was going to
Fables.
ask.
Yeah, Fables.
If you got in at green, you got in late.
I got in late. I was like 12 years old or something.
Right.
But they're actually kind of almost local because they're Athens and
yes.
I live in the Augusta area. And what was interesting is though, I went from green backwards. So like I went to document and eponymous and fables but what became my favorite REM album up and still is my favorite REM album is Life's Rich Pageant. So Life's Rich Pageant is like, to me, is like if that is just like, it was recorded at Mellencamp's recording studio with Mellencamp's engineer. And it was just really, I actually had a conversation. Oh God, back when I was doing like audio engineering in the 2000s, and his name slips on mine, but I got to talking to him on a forum about recording that album, and it was a lot of fun having that conversation with him. But Life's Rich Pageant is just the best REM album in my opinion. But then so I'm like 9th grade, Out of Time comes out, 10th grade, Automatic comes out, like just a lot of great stuff there. And or I guess 11th grade was when Automatic came out. But anyway, yeah. So I had that whole REM kind of thing in between the hair metal and the grunge. So, but yeah, it was just
that's
days.
Fantastic. I remember Life's Rich Pageant came out when I was a freshman in college.
Okay.
And we saw REM at the Grand Ole Opry House.
Wow.
That was very cool. And that album was fantastic. And I appreciate, you don't know how much I appreciate and respect the fact that you may have started at green.
Yeah, but went backwards.
You went backwards. And that's what, we all jump in somewhere because of wherever we are. And, I jumped in with the Rolling Stones around the Emotional Rescue album. Okay. Not the greatest place to start, but if you start there and you go backwards, that now you've got something. Well,
one thing interesting about Life's Rich Pageant, it was produced by Don Gemmon, and he eventually produced the first 3 Hootie albums. But I thought he did really good with, especially the first 2 Hootie albums. People have different takes on the second Hootie album, but I love it. But Gemmon just had this really good way of putting together a pop track without it sounding pop. Like with REM, I thought he did that really well. Like he was able to kind of polish those tracks on Life's Rich Pageant, where it was like they had this like radio play. I guess that's the word I'm saying, not pop. They gave them radio play. Whereas like a lot of the stuff, you go back to like Murmur, you could put it on the radio now, but back then it just wouldn't have made it on the radio.
Right. It's accessibility.
Right. He kind of shaped them to where they had the sound quality where it was like, okay, this has a start, middle, finish radio kind of play to it.
Yes.
But it didn't take away from them. It didn't make them like Green. Someone could argue is a little bit poppy, and it is.
Yes.
I mean, it comes straight out with Pop Song '89. Like this is pop,
Right.
But yeah, so that one just to me had that like perfect mix of like radio play, but keeping that alternative structure.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So, do you remember your first concert?
Yeah, it was. Don't laugh.
You don't know how many people when we ask that question say, "You're not going to believe this," or
no, you're really not going to believe this. The Monkees. The Monkees was my first.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the Monkees minus Nesmith. So this is me. I'm like 11 or 12 years old. It's like big on Nickelodeon. So like Nickelodeon like had the Monkees, like had this resurgence. And my cousin, his sister, my other cousin, but she's older than me. So I'm hanging out with my cousin who's my age. His sister, who's like in college, is like really into like this Monkees revival, and so she wants to go see the Monkees, and she's going to take us with her to like Six Flags to go see the Monkees, and we spend all day doing rides at Six Flags, and the the payoff is at the end she gets to go see the Monkees and we just have to sit there, and it was cool. It was like, it was fun. It was fun to be at a concert because it was my first concert. I wasn't like the biggest Monkees fan. I looking back now though, I mean, the Monkees, I have a little bit of a nostalgic, kind of affection for them in a way, because I feel like they got railroaded because they are musicians. And, I feel like they got downgraded because people treated them like they're Milli Vanilli, and they're not. Like, they really are musicians and they really did sing. And yeah, I mean, they had, all this stuff was recorded by what's the, the record, what's it called? The, same folks that did the Beach Boys stuff and all that stuff at Capitol, God, well, I can't think of their name. Wrecking Crew. So the Wrecking Crew did all the Monkey stuff. Like, I mean, it's not like they were miming stuff. It was like, I mean, the Beach Boys didn't play on a lot of that stuff either. The Wrecking Crew did, but like nobody downgrades them. So, anyway, but I digress. It was a fun thing to be at a concert, but it wasn't really, something I was like musically interested in at the time. One thing I did take from that concert though, and I'll never forget this. So this had to be 88, 89, something like this. So
this is way after. I mean, this is 20 years after the Monkees were a current thing.
Right. And so this, they play music before a concert. That you know how it is. Y'all been. So they played what ended up being the Batman soundtrack, the Prince Batman soundtrack.
Yeah.
The whole entire soundtrack before. And I'm sitting there with my cousin going, what is this? And like, this is Prince's new thing with the new Batman movie. And I don't know if the movie had just come out or not come out yet, but they were playing. I'm like, I freaking love this. Like, I was like Party Man and, Electric Chair and all this stuff. I was just like, this is all. And so I go to a Monkees concert, and what I do, like the next couple days later, I buy the Batman soundtrack.
Yes.
But yeah, and that is such an underrated Prince album, by the way. I feel like that one it gets lumped in as a soundtrack album, but it really is. It has some great tunes on it. Electric Chair, I feel like, is criminally underrated. I feel like that is one of the best Prince songs. That song just rocks. But anyway,
Bat Dance is a great song.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
It was a dance song. I mean, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
And there's a lot of outtakes from that album too, B-sides and stuff, like 200 Balloons and stuff. They're just really cool Prince tracks.
Yeah, I mean, I think Prince bought into what Tim Burton was doing with the movie and kind of made it his own.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would agree. I think
he knocked it out of the park, really. I mean, people talk about best soundtracks, and they usually talk about a compilation. Which soundtrack's the best? And it's like Forrest Gump or whatever. It's like, okay, yeah, very cool. Got a good picked out some good songs. But very few people think about the soundtracks where it's like someone sat down and composed original pop music for a whole movie and just had hit after hit after hit and was just killer. It was, so people forget about the Batman soundtrack because I guess it's lumped into that superhero thing, but it really is. It's a great album.
Yep. Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. But one thing on the Monkees, they gave Jimi Hendrix his first national touring gig. Jimi Hendrix, his first American tour was opening for the Monkees.
Yeah. It's and there's some there's some Nesmith stuff, like with his group, the Nationals or whatever, that he's like Joanne and some of these other songs that are pretty good. And they just a lot of people get angry that they're not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they should be if it truly is a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I feel like they should be, but as Mike Nesmith has stated before, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is really a private company. So they can do whatever they want to and invite whoever they want to.
Yes.
And obviously they don't want to invite them. So
probably
not going to be in it. They're like the Dale Murphy of the of the music scene, I guess.
Right.
They deserve it, but they're not there yet for some reason.
We won't get me started on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's not do the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame either.
No, we won't do that either. Oh my gosh, this last year was a killer. Anyway, so what do you listen to now?
Not near as much as I used to, because okay, so a couple of reasons. I used to have a 9 to 5. Like I used to work at a bank. I worked, at an insurance company and a bank for 24 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went full time in 2020 doing this. And so I don't drive really very much anymore. I fly, but I don't like listening to music when I fly. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not my thing. I talk to people on planes, which is probably annoying to some people. But I'm one of those people that, like, if you strike up a conversation with me on a plane, I will talk to you. But and I've had some cool conversations with some really cool people. Like Luther Vandross's niece was a good one. But that was really fun. But anyway, yeah, so I don't really listen to much anymore. What I do is after I finish writing for the night, or whatever I've putting together Patreon rewards or whatever, I like to have a pour, and if there's not a show I'm like trying to catch an episode of, like House of the Dragon or Yellowstone or whatever, I'll go onto YouTube and I'll just kind of see what it feeds me based on what I've listened to before, and I'll pick and choose. And lately, I've been listening to some really interesting things. Like I last year I got on a really big Tori Amos kick, and because the running up that hill was resurging and all that. And so I went like a deep dive, Tori Amos deep dive, and really found some cool stuff there. She doesn't have a lot of live stuff. Like there's not a lot of live stuff to dig through, because I love watching live performances of people, because I feel like when you watch someone live, you really find out like how good they are. Like, people are going to laugh at this, but like, I love finding musicians who just are just right in the zone, like rare moments in a music, and it doesn't have to be somebody cool, like right now, like somebody like really like on scene. I have found a performance that Whitney Houston did in '93 that just, I watch it like every once in a while just for kicks, because it like blows my socks off, like how amazing she was. But she's doing one of the songs from The Bodyguard, and I Have Nothing, and it's at a like Billboard Music Awards or something in '93, and she's nailing it so much that like midway through the song she's like closing her eyes and like smiling, because she's like, she knows she's like killing it, like I mean like killing it. Like James Brown on Letterman, like I mean like wow, he did a Letterman thing, and like he's been on Letterman a couple times, but like there's this one from like I think it's '83, and it's just like he basically just he takes over the show. Like they have to like kill the next guest, because like he's like gone over, and like they don't care, like everybody's having so much fun, it's just like, well, that guy's gone, whoever that guest was, they're out of there. And just killer. And just I like finding just amazing performances. Terry Kath, Chicago, rest in peace, but like the original lead singer guitarist for Chicago, Terry Kath, I don't think people understand how phenomenal of a guitar player Terry Kath was. I mean, the dude, I mean, smoking. Go do a search for Chicago 1970 Tanglewood 25 or 6 to 4 and watch that live performance, and the guitar solo will melt you. I mean, it's just like just shreds. I mean, shreds. It's all pentatonic scale. It's not like he's doing any virtuoso stuff, but like, I mean, it's just pure energy. And I watched there's a documentary that's free on YouTube. It's called like Finding Terry Kath or In Search of Terry Kath or something like that. It's his daughter, and she's looking for his guitar, like one of the guitars that like his most famous Telecaster that he always played with. And the whole documentary is her looking for that guitar, but then she's interviewing people from Chicago and stuff. And they tell this really interesting story about, you had mentioned Jimi Hendrix. So they're playing like the Whiskey or something in California, and they open for Hendrix. Okay. So they go out there and just like, just blow the house down. I mean, like Terry Kath goes out there and just shreds and just. Mm-hmm. So they're in the back, and so Jimmy's about to go on. So they're in their dressing room and everything, and Jimmy knocks on the door and comes in, and they're like, "Oh, it's Jimi Hendrix!" Oh, they're so excited. Mm-hmm. And you're gonna have to beep this, but they come in, and Jimmy walks in. And he goes, "You motherfuckers," because he has to follow that, And he was just like, and I'm pretty sure it's on Jimmy. I think I saw. Oh, there was an interview with Steve Lukather or somebody said this. I can't remember, but yeah, I think it's on Jimi Hendrix's headstone. His tombstone was like, it says something like, or no, it's on Terry Kath. It's on Terry Kath. It's a quote from Jimi Hendrix, like the best guitarist in the world. Like Jimi Hendrix thought that like Terry Kath was the best guitarist in the world. Mm-hmm. And so anyway, I've gone on this long Terry Kath thing. I apologize.
No, that's good. But that's good. I love it. I love it.
You need to dig in. So.
No, and but you're right. There are some, and we'll need to do a show on this at some point. Just unique live performances that you can find on YouTube.
Mm-hmm. You want that chill factor where you watch it and you're just like, oh man, they're in the zone. Like it could be any genre, any artist. Mm-hmm. Like I hate to mention Prince again, but there's a cover he does a Radiohead cover where Prince does Creep at Coachella.
Yep.
And it is just wow. Like, I mean, just like it was so good that Radiohead's like music publishing company had the video taken down, and the next day Radiohead was like, put that video back up. Like it was
so
like
good. Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Drew.
No, I was just gonna say, if you guys haven't seen it, the Aretha Franklin cover of Carole King doing Natural Woman at the Kennedy Honor Center has been making the rounds recently on Twitter. Oh. That is another one that you got to check out if you haven't
that
seen
one tonight. Yeah. I mean, any genre, any performer where like they just nail it and they like just take it to the next level. I don't discriminate against a style or whatever. Like it if it's good and the performance is like solid, I'm very interested in seeing it. I like stuff that like you can just kind of feel that energy, just like, wow, that's killer.
Yeah. And then, since we're on the Prince kick, we can't not mention the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame performance of While My Guitar Gently Weeps.
Yeah.
I mean, killed. Absolutely killed. It was like, I'm the best guitarist in the world, and I'm okay with that, and you better be too. And
what's funny is that you could watch that with no sound and be entertained by the expressions on Jeff Lynne and Tom Petty and like Danny Harrison's faces. And like Steve Winwood, they're all just like, what the hell? Like they're looking at each other like,
and George Harrison's kid is on there too, and it's just like, what the heck?
They're all just stunned and like they're trying to be musicians about it, but you can just tell that they're just like, wow, this is just like, this is so killer. And he does the total Prince thing, like he does the thing where he falls back into the guy's arms and he throws the guitar up in the air and the guitar doesn't come down.
It's just fantastic. I love it. I love it. Okay, all right, let's talk about this Russell's Reserve. I want to know what you think about it.
I love it. All these 2009 distilled CNFs, 5th and 6th floor, were consistently impressive from the day they hit shelves in 2018. So like CNF and CNA were real big in 2018, but CNF to me it's like it's pretty much a home run every time you taste it. Like some are better than others, but none of them are bad. Like
that's right.
And so I've had them at 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, 11 years, 12 years, and they're all fantastic. So it's it's killing. I mean, I'm tasting it next to the 10112, and it's holding up perfectly fine. Like, if in a blind, I might even pick this one just simply because you get a more depth with that, 110 proof NCF.
Yeah. There's a certain thing to this one, and Kevin, we've drank this one together before. but there is a very nice confectionery note that is almost elevating some of the things that we talked about earlier, just, the vanillas or the toffees. This to me screams like a chess pie, where you have just that really nice kind of baking thing. You got a little bit of the cherry note, you got a little bit of the citrus, but it kind of fades in the background once the finish comes through. It's just so, I don't know the right way to say this without saying oxidized, because oxidized has negative connotations to me, but it breathes. It's very airy, it's very open, and it's just like a very light, delicate, but still mature version of all the other flavor profiles that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, it has a fizziness to it, like a prickly, like a friend of mine, Brian, always calls it the Camp Nelson prickle, but it has this effervescent kind of prickliness to it, where it's got a tingle to it. Like a lot of folks say cherry cola with CNF, but sixth floor, fifth and sixth floor, because they do have that fizziness and that cherry you were talking about. But this one is less of the cherry like you're talking about and more of the heavier baking spice that you find in the 10112 that we were just sipping. So you get a maturity to it, even though it's younger than the 10112. It has a lot of the same kind of like, and it's from being in that sixth floor. It has a lot of that. It's not so much tannic, but there's definitely some oak here. I mean, no doubt about it. And there's some one could call leather tobacco notes that you find like in the 12 year as well.
To me, the finish, and I love everything about this, but the finish on this one I think is very unique in that you think it's going to finish with more of the oaky note to it, and then it kind of releases a very pleasant citrus note to it, and it's kind of like, okay, I'm not going to hit you so hard with the oak. Here's a nice little orange note,
like a blood orange. Like to me, it's a richer orange note, or even like I know it's not as dark, but it's almost like a Tangelo or something where it's definitely not as lemony citrus as like a navel orange might be, where it's like kind of pushing more the brighter on side. It's more like a blood orange or like a Tangelo where it has like a little bit more depth to it.
Yeah. Well, my theory is there's never been a bad Russell's Reserve single barrel, and you can refute that if you want, but I've never had one that was.
No, I mean, there's never been a bad one. I mean, there's definitely some that are better than others for sure. I mean, there's some that are just mind blowing. There are also ones that, especially if you're looking at private selections, that are so unique that you're going to turn some people off. So like some of the 2020 E's, like Rickhouse E, were very fruity, like in a tropical way, and had like a mineral note to it, like a sweet mineral note, where I wouldn't say it's like a Dickel funk, but it has that kind of like it's pushing that direction.
Yep.
And I think that those kind of turn some people off. There's been some K barrels that have had like a lot of berry notes, like raspberry, blackberry, this type of stuff, which I love, but some people maybe not looking for that in turkey. They're not looking for a berry note. They're looking for more vanilla, caramel type of thing. So, when it comes to the single barrels, especially with the private barrel selection program, there is a lot of variance, and some things may not be some people's jam just because they're so different.
Right.
But bad is such a like in 2022. I mean, we're at the point now where there's so much good whiskey. If you can't find good whiskey, you're just looking in the wrong place because or you're because it used to be that, like when I first got into whiskey, I just straight up avoided craft altogether because there was so many like just really bad whiskeys out there. Where like they were just so young and just like cardboard and cornbread that was like left out for a couple days, and just notes that were just not pleasant. But now that's kind of changed. Where like there's some there's a lot of really good craft stuff out there.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you just have to kind of find something that speaks to you. But,
Yeah.
you know, your chances of finding something bad nowadays, I mean, yeah, it's out there.
Sure.
But I think as long as you avoid the bottom shelf plastic bottle kind of stuff that, like, you know, you shouldn't be buying anyway, and maybe some of the house brands for certain large, you know, wine and spirit, you know, vendors. I'm not saying any names, but
well, yeah,
where they're
I can't.
using like artificial aging and this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, if you avoid that kind of stuff, you'll probably end up with something decent. It's just, are you ending up with something decent for the money? You know,
Right.
Right.
And and talking with somebody that is known for their love of
good.
a certain brand, you know, I always encourage people explore.
Sure.
You know, explore. Yeah, try this. Try this craft whiskey. It's not going to taste like Wild Turkey. You may love Wild Turkey, but guess what? Bourbon is big. Bourbon is broad. Try something different.
You don't want to live in a box, because if you never try anything else, you don't know what else is out there to compare things to.
Right.
So how do you know where your product stands next to everyone else? I would be doing a disservice to Wild Turkey fans if I didn't try other things, because, you know, I'd just be living in an echo chamber. It's
Right.
like, you know, I have to go out and try what everyone else is doing, because I need to know for myself, you know, how's this stacking up, you know?
Right.
And I mean, there's plenty of other whiskeys I like. I just, you know, 90% of my bottles are Wild Turkey, but that doesn't mean that I don't like other things. Like,
Right.
you know, I buy Eagle Rare on the semi-regular. If I can find it, you know, I usually buy it because I like
Right.
drinking Eagle Rare. Like, I think
Sure.
it's 10 years, it's 90 proof, it tastes great, and it's probably the best thing that Buffalo Trace makes outside of the limited edition stuff, and I stand by that. So
Yeah.
come at me all you want to with your Rock Hill Farms or whatever, but
Yeah.
you know, I think Eagle
Yeah.
Rare is like just the deal. Now, are some bottles better than others? Yeah, because I mean, it's almost a single barrel product. It's not quite a single barrel product. But yeah, I mean, I've had some bottles where I'm like, I've had some where I've been like, holy cow, like I want another one of these. Like, you know, this is just awesome. And then I've had some where I'm like, yeah, it's kind of like middle of the road Eagle Rare kind of thing. But yeah, I mean, there's other whiskeys I enjoy, but none as much as Turkey. Like, I can get just as much love out of Russell's 10 as I can Eagle Rare.
Right.
But you know, they have, to me, there's two big differences between those. One is that Russell's 10 has more spice. So, like, when you're drinking Russell's 10 versus Eagle Rare, you're going to get more spice on the Russell side. With Eagle Rare, you're going to get more like a butter note. It's like, it's hard for me to explain, but it's like a butter kind of quality, like a melted sweet butter. And that's, to me, the only real big differences between the two. At least with you know, like Russell's 10 from like 21 and back. There were some bottles of Russell's 10 early this year that didn't really taste like some of the ones that had come before it, but you know, I don't know if that's just, you know, me picking on a batch or two and how that's going to level out, but I wrote about it on my blog.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I like Eagle Rare 10 just as much as Russell's 10, but I like that 10-year profile. I like that where it has that right touch of maturity to it.
Yeah, I think you're probably in good company on that. That tends to be where both of us live as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll start wrapping things up here, David,
Sure.
because we've taken up a good chunk.
You might
of
even
your
have to edit
evening.
some of this.
Nope. This has been awesome. Absolutely fantastic from the word go. But I want to make sure let people know where they can find you on social media, David.
Okay. So on Instagram, I'm at Rarebird101, or if you want to check out my personal Instagram page, it's at ourbird101. And then for Twitter, I'm Rbird101. And then Patreon, I'm at patreon.com/rarebird101. So that's my social channels. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn too, but it's more for like business contacts. So, but you can find me there. And then if you're interested in the blog, it's rarebird101.com. And if you're interested in my books, it's wildturkeybook.com.
Yeah. Buy the book.
Awesome.
You'll enjoy it. All right.
Thank you.
Drew, where can people find you?
Yep. So I'm going to be one of the ones that goes down with the ship on Twitter, I think. So I'm on Twitter at DrewCrawley63. Mostly just being a jerk and tweeting my late night opinions. On Instagram at Drew.Crawley63. That's where you can find the majority of the music announcements. And then if you are so inclined, I would be appreciative if you would listen to the new single Wild Boys. It's on Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube currently.
Awesome. Hey, Drew, I'll have to check that out. Little known fact here. I was a songwriter. Like, so I wrote and recorded some songs.
Wait a minute. We're an hour and a half into this show, and now you tell us you're a songwriter?
Yeah. Yeah. It was a big deal for me for a while. And
awesome.
I mean, I really got into Pro Tools and engineering as well, and helped some other groups and stuff.
Oh my gosh.
And it was a good time. And then I guess around 2008 or so, I had to bow out. You have kids and life changes, and it's been wonderful. But and it wasn't like I was going somewhere anyway. But yeah, I'll have to, outside of this live stream or podcast or whatever, I'll have to share some stuff with you.
Yeah, we'll get a text thread going as soon as we finish up.
Sounds good.
Awesome. That is fantastic.
Don't laugh though.
That is fantastic. But yeah, be sure to check out Drew's stuff. A new single out, Wild Boys, and new album coming out early in 2023. So be on the lookout for that. If you're in the area, he's usually playing somewhere around town. So
cool.
As far as our show, if you want to watch us, and why wouldn't you? Go look at these handsome guys that are on here tonight. I mean, look at this. Okay. If you want to watch us anyway, YouTube, go to YouTube, subscribe to the channel. You don't want to miss anything. You certainly don't want to miss this show because it is just fantastic. David's been terrific. If you want to just listen, you're driving down the road, you want to listen on the podcast, you're driving over the hill through the woods to grandmother's house, you go for Thanksgiving dinner. All right. You can listen to us on Apple, Spotify, Google services. We have a YouTube page. We post all of our shows there. We have a YouTube group where if you're sitting around and you're drinking some Wild Turkey 101, I mean, we've covered a pretty good gambit on Wild Turkey tonight. We did the 101, we did the 12-year, we've done a Russell's Reserve pick. That's a pretty good cross section of what Wild Turkey has to offer. So if you're at home and you're drinking some Wild Turkey, what are you listening to? Share with us on that YouTube page, on that Facebook page, what you're drinking, what you're listening to, because I've got some really good ideas about what Wild Turkey pairs well with music wise, and we'll be posting those this week as well. So until next time, first, happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Thanksgiving.
And second, on behalf of Drew, our wonderful guest, David, and myself, cheers, love, and Freebird.
Cheers.
Good night, everybody.